Hey y'all, I'm glad you got to see me. I found something else in Uncle Diesel's journal that I wanted to read to y'all. This sheds a different light on how I've looked at Uncle Diesel and his relationship with Cecilia and all of the stories that I had heard about the two of them from the family. Um, Uncle Diesel in this part is talking about how he and Cecilia got along. He writes, and every time we'd get over one argument, she'd start another. And then she would tell me to calm down. The way that she'd look at me with those beautiful brown eyes and beg me to stop, she would never learn. Yeah, see, that part right there is him putting all of the responsibility for their disagreements and their arguments onto her. He never started any of their arguments. He never started a fight. It was always about her. He goes on and he writes about her. Then she went and got herself pregnant. She was so guilty. She felt so sad. But I told her I would take care of her. We could go to Houston, where I know a doctor. We could leave early tomorrow and be back by dark. Well, that wasn't what she wanted to hear. That's not what she thought take care of meant. She wanted us to get married and get married right away. She could not face her dear, dear mama and papa and tell them she was with child unless she could tell them she was married. If we got married right away, she could tell them a little later about the baby. So I gave up my future and gave in to her tears. So he, a man in his mid-50s, is going to give up his future because he gave in to her tears. I would be surprised if she was actually 20 years old by the time that they got together. I think she was out of high school because nothing is ever said about her going to school. So I think she's out of high school, but she's really young. And the idea of him thinking he gave up his future because he gave into her tears, I really hate that he assumes that her tears are manipulative and fake and meant to move him against his will. He writes a little more. A guy I went to high school with was a priest now, but north of here. I told her we'd go up early on Saturday, and with a sacrificial offering, he could marry us on the quiet like. She'd come back with a ring on her finger. But that didn't stop her waterworks. She said they were tears of joy now. Women, what was I getting myself into? All of this stuff in the family happened before Robert was even born. This happened in the 1950s, and I don't remember anyone in the family ever mentioning that Cecilia was pregnant. This is all, the family lore, but the story goes that her family didn't like him because he was white. Uncle Diesel told his brother that Cecilia was his one true love and that he was finally ready to settle down. Then, when they went off to get married, she took all of his money from him and left him at the altar. So the story that has been passed down through the generations sounds at least a little bit different than the story I'm finding in his journal. So he writes down this story in the journal that's a little bit different from the real story, or at least includes details that was not in the story he told to family and friends. And then he buried these journals just before he died here on the place. I'm not really sure what does or doesn't add up here. As I find more information I will read it to you and let you know what's going on. This is the thread painting that I'm calling Ghostober. And the figure in the middle is Uncle Diesel. This is what I saw in the dream that I had, where I saw him burying his journals. He's wearing his big 10-gallon hat like I saw in the photograph that Robert showed me. There's his shoulders. He's squatting down on the ground. And it looks like he's brushing his hands together, like maybe he was brushing the dirt off of his hands. This is a tree, and I'm going to add another tree behind him and a tree on this side of him. I'm going to add some depth and shadows on the ground and on the background that I hope will make these loose and loopy stitches look more dreamlike, maybe more misty, see-through, translucent. And this is what I've done on this thread painting so far. And so I also want to tell y'all what happened with my nightmare. Last night before I went to sleep, I told myself I'm going to be very aware and proactive in my dreams. I am going to be lucid and be in control again, especially if the nightmare comes back. And the nightmare did come back. The water is murky and muddy, and I'm fighting for my life. And I hear the woman's voice again. Help me. Help me. So I stopped struggling, and I said, I can't help you. Help me. And the woman's voice told me, you can help me. You can hear me. Help me. Help me. And I felt myself floating away. And I told her, I'm dying. Help me. And it's like she said it back to me. I'm dying. Help me. Help me. And then I heard a big crash, and I woke up with Robert shaking my arm. He was saying, you're not dying. Wake up. You're not dying. You're okay. Well, the big crash was a tree limb fell on the roof of the house and slid down the roof. And this morning in the daylight, Robert went out and he saw the branch and he threw it over the fence, but it was a pretty big one and it made a big crash. And since the dream and the branch and the crash and the noise left us both shook up, we're having a pretty quiet day with very little media and just kind of hanging out and enjoying each other's company. I do have an earworm to share with you. I've been listening to some classical music to get ready for the Halloween holiday because, you know, hauntings and owls and nightmares are not enough to put me in a Halloween mood. So I've been listening to some classical spooky music, and the earworm of the day is Night on Bald Mountain by Mussorgsky. It was in the movie Fantasia, and they did a fantastic job of animating it. If you remember it from that movie, or if you've never heard it before, go listen to Night on Bald Mountain by Mussorgsky. You'll enjoy it. Beautiful, evocative music, so strongly emotional. And I'm kind of using the strong emotional music to manage my own feelings. So get yourselves ready for Halloween with music and fun, and have some laughs on Halloween, and hopefully all of my hauntings and spirits and owls will move on. I see a cat. Dr. Livingston. Yeah, I guess the ghosts are chasing her too. I don't even know what's going on anymore in my house. Okay, y'all take good care of yourselves. Be nice to yourself. Love, Spike.